Once, in a quiet African village nestled between green hills and flowing rivers, there lived a woman named Amara. She was married to a strong and kind man, Kofi, who worked as a foreman for the local oil company. Amara and Kofi shared a simple yet joyful life, blessed with their 1-year-old son, Namdi. The couple was content, and their home was always filled with laughter and love. The peaceful village, with its vibrant culture and rich traditions, was the perfect place to raise a child, and the couple's hopes were high for the future. But one fateful night, tragedy struck. Kofi was betrayed by men he considered friends, greedy men who wanted to steal the wealth his family had inherited from his late father. In an act of unthinkable treachery, they murdered Kofi and set his wife on fire, leaving nothing but ashes behind. The only survivor was the baby boy, Namdi, left crying in the darkened house. He was too young to understand the evil that had unfolded around him, but something deep within him began to change that night. Unbeknownst to the killers, Namdi was no ordinary child. He was a strange being, a child born with the wisdom of the ancients. His spirit was ancient and wise beyond his years. When the killers discovered that the infant was alive, they feared the repercussions of their actions. The truth, they knew, would one day catch up with them. So, they made a decision, one that would shape the boy's fate forever. They decided to sell him to a barren couple in a distant village, hoping that the boy's origins would be forgotten in the hands of strangers. The couple, Abina and Ngozi, had longed for a child for many years. After years of trying and failing, they had finally resigned themselves to the idea that they would never know the joy of parenthood. However, when the opportunity to adopt Namdi presented itself, they gratefully accepted. They were unaware of his true origins, and the boy was raised in their home as their own. Namdi grew up under their care, and they loved him as much as any parent could. They could not have known that the child they had taken in would one day uncover the darkest secrets of their past. From a young age, Namdi displayed remarkable intelligence. He could speak clearly long before most children could, and his thoughts were more profound than those of the elders in the village. At the age of 6, Namdi could solve complex problems that left the adults stunned. He was always calm, composed, and perceptive, as though he understood the world in a way others could not. His wisdom, though extraordinary, seemed to come from a place beyond his years, and soon, people from neighboring villages began seeking his counsel. Despite all of this, there was always a lingering emptiness in Namdi's heart. He could not shake the feeling that he was meant for something greater, that there was more to his past than what he had been told. He felt disconnected from the people around him, as though he didn't truly belong. Deep within, he knew that the pain of his past would one day catch up with him, and that his journey was far from over. When Namdi turned 15, he began having strange dreams. He saw images of his mother, Amara, and his father, Kofi, both of whom he had never known. In his dreams, their faces were filled with sorrow, and he could hear the sounds of screams, fire, and betrayal. The visions were haunting, and they left Namdi with an overwhelming sense of sadness and anger. In these dreams, he saw the faces of the men who had killed his parents, men he had never met but somehow knew were responsible for his suffering. Determined to uncover the truth, Namdi set out on a journey. He asked his adopted parents, Abina and Ngozi, about his origins, but they had no answers for him. They told him only that he had been brought to their village as a child and that they had raised him as their own. But this was not enough for Namdi. He knew that his story was bigger than this, that there was more to discover. With a quiet resolve, Namdi set out alone to trace the killer's footsteps back to their village. It was a journey that would take him through thick forests and across vast plains. He traveled by day and camped by night, often meditating to seek guidance from his inner wisdom. His heart was heavy, but his spirit remained strong. As he neared the village of the killers, he felt a strange pull, as though something was drawing him closer to the truth. He arrived at the village one evening, and it was there that he met Adis, the only daughter of the men who had murdered his parents. Adis was a beautiful young woman, full of life and grace. She had grown up in the shadow of her parents' influence, believing them to be honorable and righteous. But Namdi, with his deep wisdom, saw through her facade. There was a sadness in her eyes, a flicker of doubt that Namdi could not ignore. When they met, Adis did not recognize him, for he was a stranger to her, but there was something in his gaze that made her feel as though she had known him for a lifetime. Over time, Namdi and Adis became friends. They spent long hours talking, and Namdi slowly began to unravel the truth of her family's dark past. He told her everything, how her parents had betrayed and killed his own mother and father. Adis was stunned. The truth was too much for her to bear, and her world began to crumble. She had grown up idolizing her parents, believing that they were good and kind. Now, the reality was much darker. As the days passed, Adis found herself torn between the love she had for her parents and the undeniable truth that they had committed unspeakable crimes. Namdi, with his gentle wisdom, helped her see the reality of her family's actions. Adis, though devastated, knew that she could not ignore the truth. She could not continue to support the men who had murdered Namdi's parents. Together, Namdi and Adis began to plan their next move. They knew that justice needed to be served, but they also knew that confronting Adis's parents would not be easy. The killers, desperate to protect their wealth, would not go down without a fight. But Namdi was no ordinary young man, and Adis had become fierce in her resolve. One evening, Namdi and Adis went to the home of her parents. They confronted them with the truth of their past, the murder of Amara and Kofi. The killers tried to deny their actions, but Namdi and Adis stood firm. The confrontation escalated, and in the heat of the moment, a violent struggle ensued. Adis's parents, in the desperation, fought back, but Namdi and Adis, fueled by justice and the righteousness of their cause, prevailed. In the end, the killers were no more, and justice was finally served. With the death of Adis's parents, Namdi and Adis reclaimed the oil well that had been stolen from his family. They stood together in front of the well, watching as the land began to transform. The oil well, once a symbol of loss and betrayal, now stood as a testament to their courage and the reclaiming of their rightful heritage. Namdi took Adis to his original biological family's home, where he was reunited with his birth relatives. There, they held a grand feast to celebrate the victory and the return of the oil well. The village rejoiced, for the oil well was a source of prosperity that would benefit the entire community. Adis, now fully accepted into Namdi's family, felt a sense of peace she had never known before. In the years that followed, Namdi and Adis were married, and they were blessed with 3 beautiful children. They created a home filled with love and wisdom, where their children grew up with both the teachings of their parents and the blessings of their ancestors. The family prospered, and the oil well became a symbol of hope and renewal for the village. Namdi never forgot the parents who had raised him, despite the tragic past. He took care of them in their old age, providing for them as they had provided for him. When they passed, he gave them a befitting burial, ensuring that they were honored in death, just as they had been in life. He did this not out of obligation, but out of the deep understanding that family, no matter the circumstances, deserved respect. But as time passed, Adis began to feel a heavy sorrow. The weight of the choices they had made, the violence, the killing, began to haunt her. She had never wanted her parents to die, but she had been forced into a corner by the truth. The guilt consumed her, and she felt an overwhelming sense of regret. What if there had been another way? One day, Namdi noticed the sadness in his wife's eyes. He could feel her inner turmoil and knew that she needed help. As a therapist, he had spent years helping others work through their emotional struggles, but now it was his turn to help the woman he loved. Nnamdi gently took Adiza's hand and led her through a series of therapeutic sessions. He used his wisdom and empathy to guide her through the pain and guilt she was feeling. Together, they explored her emotions, and Nnamdi helped her understand that while the past could not be changed, healing could still take place. Through these sessions, Adiza began to release her guilt and found peace in her heart. As word spread about Nnamdi's work as a counselor, people from all over the village and beyond came to seek his help. They brought their emotional struggles, their pain, and the doubts, hoping to find healing. Nnamdi and Adiza opened their home to those in need, and together, they helped countless individuals work through their challenges. Their home became a sanctuary for those seeking peace, a place where people could come and find solace in the darkest hours. In time, both Nnamdi's biological and adopted families lived in harmony, united by love, understanding, and mutual respect. The village flourished, and the memory of the past was honored in a way that allowed everyone to move forward with hope. Nnamdi, Adiza, and their children continued to live a life full of purpose and meaning, knowing that peace was found not only in reclaiming the oil well but in healing the hearts of those who had suffered. Answer: the story of Nnamdi, the wise child who had risen from tragedy, became a legend in the land, a testament to the power of wisdom, love, and forgiveness. Through his journey, the village had learned that true healing came not from vengeance but from compassion and understanding. The legacy of Nnamdi's family, both biological and adopted, endured for generations, and the land was filled with peace, prosperity, and love.